What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Undrunken Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, and I want you to join me as I talk with real people and have super gritty conversations about their journeys to becoming undrunken. So let's go. Dump the drink because it's time to get this party started. Welcome back. Please join me for part 2 with Heidi Lee. Enjoy.
Hi again.
Hi.
Part deux.
Some technical difficulties. Ugh, it's getting exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't have the subject matter expertise
Sometimes.
sometimes.
That's what we call them at my work.
Yes.
SME.
Yes. But we make it work. So we get to hang out again
Yeah.
and pick up where we left off, which was, I think, something that's really important. And we were talking about it off microphone a second ago is narcissistic abuse. Because I think that I personally, and I learned this after talking with you, I think that there was definitely some periods of my relationship with alcohol that I was using it because of narcissistic abuse that I was enduring.
In relationships that you were in?
Definitely in at least one relationship, but for certain, like through different family members as well. It was a coping thing for me. Like, oh, I got to go see this person. I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to have 2 drinks when I'm there. I'm definitely going to get shit-faced afterwards.
Yeah, because you want to numb yourself.
Because you just feel like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So I love you shared this. What is narcissistic abuse?
So narcissistic abuse is a pattern of behavior that involves a lot of like mental and emotional abuse. I should say like for the end goal of like manipulation and control. And it's a pattern of behavior that is used by narcissists, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, which is part of a class of what's called a cluster B personality disorder. There's NPD. This is people with borderline personality disorder, sociopaths. There's another one called, I think it's pronounced histrionic, which are very dramatic individuals. And so like you just said, you were thinking back to like your past relationships and times that you've been involved with people that were somewhere on that spectrum of narcissism. Right. And it's hard to estimate exactly how many people in our population have NPD or have a cluster B personality disorder, because if you think by definition, somebody that is a narcissist has like what is delusions of grandeur, right? Like they don't think anything's wrong with them. So how do you diagnose somebody that isn't looking for help and doesn't think that there's anything wrong with their behavior?
It's everybody else.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard to pinpoint. But the estimates I've read is that it's approximately like 15-ish% of the population.
See, this is why I asked you if you'd read that book, Human Magnet Syndrome, because that kind of personality is actually attracted to other personalities.
Yeah, it's like the yin and the yang.
Yeah, and when I started learning about like different attachment theories and narcissistic abuse and all these kind of things, it's like it's actually a pretty small population of people. And you start to feel like I just attract them, and you're like, actually, yes, you do.
Yeah, you do. That's the thing. And even so, if it's approximately 15%-ish of the population, but even if you were to like err on like the low side and say 10% of the population, that's 1 in every 10 people you meet.
Yeah.
So I feel like it actually, I would say, is probably more prevalent than we recognize or like acknowledge.
1 in 10 is still a lot.
It's a lot. And I'll think about like, I'll be sitting in a big meeting at work where there's 50 people, 60 people on the call, and I'll sit there and I'll look at how many people on it. I'm like, there's at least 5 narcissists in this meeting right now. There's at least 5 people in this meeting that have zero empathy for other human beings.
It's easy to understand why humanity does some of the things that it does with that being the case. But back to your story.
Yeah, we could go
fuck the narcissists. Like, go get some help. Get over your damn self. Fall in love with yourself for real.
Yeah.
Because That's the thing I think a lot of people misunderstand. A narcissist actually doesn't love themselves.
No, they hate themselves inside. They're miserable inside, and that's why they have
Yeah.
to put everyone else down around them to inflict pain on others to try to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
It's really sad, actually. And it's a cycle of abuse, I would say, just like any other kind of cycle. There's, it's people, I feel like, there's always that argument of nature versus nurture, but I feel like people like that, there's got to be some sort of component about their upbringing and the way they were raised and, I don't know, their experiences.
Right.
I think everyone is just a product of their experiences in life.
Speaking of experiences. So you quit drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally believe that part of the reason you finally did separate was because you had quit drinking.
Yeah, I think I was finally starting to gain some clarity around my circumstances and in the environment I was in. And giving up alcohol gave me the clarity to finally be able to see that. Like the fog was being lifted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we left off from the first episode, this is back in 2021. I'd had just a shitty year overall. I had to get my dog put down earlier in the year. I had these like mysterious health issues that went undiagnosed for a couple months before finally realizing what it was and like finally getting the diagnosis. Having a less than supportive partner throughout all of it. But thankfully I was speaking to a therapist that entire year as well. So I was getting support from someone at least.
Did the therapist help you at all with giving up alcohol, or was giving up alcohol hard for you at all?
No, because at the time I was giving it up for the medical reasons because I didn't know I was just trying to like self-diagnose and figure out what was going on with my guts. And so at the time, giving up alcohol seemed, and I don't want to like exaggerate and say it was a life or death, but to me it was like, this is like, I had to do it. I have to feel better. I can't live like this. Like I had gotten to a point where I was so like physically and mentally in distress that it wasn't an option for me.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had to cut it out in order to try to feel better, to be okay.
Your why was bigger than any hard part of it or any challenge that it might have been.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going through such bad depression and anxiety at the time too. Like I felt like such a basket case, and like I was so out of my mind that it's like drinking didn't even sound like fun. Like I would take a drink of a glass of wine, or I would take like a sip and it would trigger a panic attack almost instantly. And same thing with smoking weed. Like I used to smoke every day, and it got to a point where I would take one hit or I would eat one edible and it would just fly into an instant panic attack, which is not fun.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a panic attack, that's not a very good way to relax.
No.
It's not very relaxing
very
at all.
Counterproductive.
Yeah. So when you're trying to like just chill out at the end of the night, it's not, it doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd quit drinking that summer and went through these medical issues and then was diagnosed with depression. And so fast forward, we're in late September, October of 2021, and I opened up to my therapist about the things that my boyfriend at the time was saying to me, the way he was treating me, things that he had said and done. And my therapist identified, she said, that sounds like narcissistic abuse. And she's like, I can't tell you what to do. Can't tell you to leave him, but I can tell you that you are in an abusive relationship and like you got to make your own decisions. Right. So thankfully, my mom let me stay at her house for a couple weeks. I think that was such a huge, like such a hard pill to swallow for me. Like I didn't know I was in an abusive relationship, which sounds crazy, but part of the like abuse cycle with a narcissist is it's actually called the SAD cycle. It's called seduce, abuse, and discard or destroy. And so that first part of it, the seduce phase, like it's like you're on cloud 9.
Well, and you met him at a bar.
Yeah. where I was working
And
years
so
ago.
alcohol's involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that alcohol makes that game that they play much more enchanting.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like a fairy tale at first. And so you get swept off your feet and you just get love bombed and showered with affection and compliments, and you bought me flowers and expensive bottles of wine. We would go out all the time. Like, it was incredible. The first year and a half of our relationship was fucking amazing. But then that bad behavior starts to creep in. And so then you have this, what you think is your baseline for them and their behavior and how they act towards you, when really it was all
right,
kind of smoke and mirrors to begin with. But that's the person who I thought he was the person I met. And so then when that bad behavior started to creep in, it makes it that much easier to minimize the behavior. And
you've already got the ideal in your mind.
Yeah.
And so you're holding it to that standard.
Yeah, exactly. So when he deviates from that standard, it's like, oh, well, he had a bad day at work, or, oh, it was COVID. COVID was fucking weird and it was hard on everyone.
Was there ever a blow up with alcohol where you were like, oh, he was just drunk? Did his personality change? Did yours change when you were drinking?
I'm trying to think. I can get mean when I'm drinking. I have to drink a lot to get mean, though. I used to get wild back in the day. I feel like there would be a couple times where he would just kind of like make a comment out of nowhere, and it would just catch me off guard. And there were times, but like I don't know, like you say specifically when he was drunk or when we were drinking, but like we were always drinking. So
that's where I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a few things in all your story here, right? So yours and Morgan's relationship ended very largely in part to alcohol.
Yeah.
This relationship maintained itself largely due in part to alcohol.
Yeah.
And then ended pretty concurrent to you giving up alcohol.
Yeah.
And getting clear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as much as I want people to learn that narcissistic abuse is bad and it sucks, and like get help. Like that, I mean, you said, thank God you had your therapist.
Yeah.
Because that's crazy making.
Yeah.
It really is. Like you really do think that you're crazy because of the gaslighting and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and the manipulation and yeah, I don't know where I would be if I hadn't been seeing that therapist at the time, to be honest. I don't know if I would have made it through that situation.
I'm grateful that you quit drinking when you did. No, especially knowing how dark it got for you. I don't think you would have survived if alcohol had been part of that.
I don't think I would have, to be honest. And that's something that, thankfully, after I opened up to my therapist and she identified what was happening, I also received a new diagnosis for PTSD as well. And so all of these things that have been happening to me that were seemingly unrelated over that last year, like the depression, anxiety, I was having really bad insomnia, like fatigue, and gosh, what else? All of these things. Oh, and my medical issues too. Like when you're under a severe amount of stress, like it lowers your immune system and your body's response and ability to fight off infections. And so I had this kidney infection that lasted for months. And actually prior to that, I had gotten a dental implant earlier that year in like February, I think, of that year, and it got infected like 3 times. So I was having these recurring infections all year long. That's not normal for me.
No, that was your body trying to tell you something.
Yeah, my body was just like shutting down. Like it just couldn't fight anymore. Yeah. And so once I received that diagnosis of PTSD, then I was able to get myself out of that situation. Once I learned what was happening and I realized that I was in an abusive relationship, I went to my mom's. I ended the relationship, thank God, made a pretty clean split, and was able to walk away, move forward, and start healing. And having that diagnosis was so helpful for me, and being able to understand what was going on in my brain.
Yeah.
At the time, because like you said, like I guess like I said last week, like I felt like I was going fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And so then I realized, like, no, actually my brain is having a very normal response to
a threat.
Yeah, to being in an unhealthy environment.
Yeah.
My brain was under attack. I was under attack emotionally, and I was trying to reason it away, like logically,
Right.
you know, because we always want to think our way out of situations, but my gut and my intuition and my body was telling me the opposite. My body was trying to tell me what was going on, and I wasn't listening.
Did you ever consider going back to alcohol after that?
I would say, because my PTSD symptoms lasted for a good 6-ish months. Like, I still was waking up with anxiety every day for months after I moved out, and I bought my first house in March of 2022. And I was still, you know, I'd wake up and like I'd open my eyes, and my first thought, I would be like, am I anxious? Like, do I have an impending sense of doom right now? And I would wake up every day, and then I would feel this, you know, like the butterflies in my chest, and I'm like, oh fuck, it's still happening. And I remember like waking up one day and like, I want to say the next summer of 2022, and finally I woke up and I was like, holy shit, I feel normal. Like, I finally feel normal again. But it took me that long for my body to kind of like work through that process. And so I didn't, that whole time, my therapist told me, like, this is not the time to try to drink. She's like, I do not want you to drink right now. I don't want you to smoke weed. Like, your brain's going through some shit.
Yeah.
Like, you need to process this, and you need to do it like sober. You need to do it sober. And so I took that to heart, and I listened to her, and I didn't even think about wanting to drink. Like, I had no desire to, because I was just so caught up in the fight or flight that it's just, everything was scary.
That's what you mean by you never planned to quit drinking.
No, I never planned on quitting. I quit because it felt like it was life or death to me. Like, I had to quit. And so this whole time, actually, that's a good point. Like, this whole time, I'm planning, I'm like, I just need to get through this. Once I get over this, I'll start drinking again. Like, I just need to, you know, once I feel better, I can start drinking again. But then at a certain point, when she gets so far out, by the time I started feeling better, it had already been almost a year since I quit drinking. And so then at that point, I'm like, well, I haven't drank in a year. Why would I want to start now?
Right.
But those initial few months, no, I had no intention of staying sober. I really needed to get I would say a good 6 months at least of sobriety under my belt before I realized that I had a problem and I should actually probably stay sober.
Really?
Yeah. It was definitely like an afterthought for me.
What was that like? I mean, because I love this. You quit drinking on accident, and then you're like, hey, actually, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, wait, oh, shit. Maybe I am an alcoholic. Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, what was that like?
Oh, man. I mean,
This had to have been around New Year's.
Oh, no, this was probably, gosh, I don't know. I don't even remember what I did for New Year's that year. Oh, I remember, actually. I went to sleep at like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I did not go out, that's for sure.
This is part of not drinking life, I've discovered.
Yeah.
Go to sleep at a reasonable hour.
Yeah. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
A symptom of PTSD is also memory loss.
Yeah.
And so honestly, there's a lot of those first few months that like it all gets a little jumbled for me. Like, I couldn't tell you exactly like a milestone of when I had that epiphany and that realization that like, oh, I really actually shouldn't be drinking. Like, oh, I've been using this as a Band-Aid for 20 years.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, I would say sometime in that first, like probably 6 to 9 months after I quit.
What'd that feel like?
I don't know. Hard. A lot of, I would say, I feel like I was aggressively healing for the first like year.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And if anybody listening is wondering what that means, it's like, oh, I got to heal, and I'm going to read 10 books, and I'm going to have the therapist.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the courses, and I'm going to listen to all the songs, and I'm going to yoga, and I'm going to meditate. What else can I do?
I'm going to do all the things
hard
all at once.
charge. I want to heal.
Yeah. Yes. I want to heal, and I want to be healed. and I'm tired of healing, so I just want to get through it so I can just be healed and like feel better. Yeah, I found meditation around that same time in my life as well. I got the Headspace app offered to me for free through my work in September 2021, I think, which is like that's everything was coming to a head at that point. And so it's just, I don't know, I think the universe gives us gifts sometimes, and the fact that my work offered that to me at that time in my life was such a gift, because I did use meditation, and I've read like every single self-help book under the sun, and that's all I read. That was the only genre of book that I read for like 2 years straight.
Was there any books about alcoholism? I mean, so you're saying 6 to 9 months into this, you're aggressively healing, and you're realizing you do have this challenged relationship with alcohol. Did you start learning about that?
I can't remember. I was reading a lot of books about like mental health and trauma. Like I read The Body Keeps the Score, When the Body Says No. Brene Brown. One about forgiveness. One about anger and boundaries. I don't know that I did, actually. You know, when I was younger, I got in trouble with the cops more than once. And so I've been to my fair share of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the past. I've worked the steps before. I was doing it solely like going through the motions when I was younger. But I still, even though I wasn't maybe taking that advice seriously in my younger years, I still did take that information in, and I retained a lot of it. When I actually got sober and I actually realized that I should be sober finally 15 years later. Yeah. Forget what the question was now.
Oh, just you know, for you to realize, you know, I love this quit drinking on accident thing. And then you realize, oh wait, it's probably a good thing. And just what that was like. Yeah. You know, because I think there's been a few people I've talked to that's like, oh, I just feel better. And then for myself, right, like I knew I wasn't the best drunk, but I didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
Did I though?
That was my thing, is that I would always play the comparison game in my 20s, in my early 30s too, that I would look at my friends or look at my ex-boyfriends and say, well, yeah, I drink, but like I'm not as bad as that guy is. You know, like if I was a bartender, like my life revolved around alcohol. I worked with, you know, alcohol. I would play with alcohol. Every social event I went to, alcohol. You know, you go to shows, anything you go and do, it revolves around alcohol. And so, of course, when you are immersed in that kind of a lifestyle, like, of course, you are going to also be surrounded by alcoholics. And so it's not hard to find somebody that's worse off than you.
Yeah. Or thinking it.
Yeah. Or, I think that they're worse off. Consumes more than you do, I guess. I don't
Struggles
know.
more.
Struggles more, yeah.
Yeah. The how long did you stay in the bartending after you quit drinking?
I had actually already
left
bartending. Yeah, I got a job at Microsoft in October of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like squarely in a boring office job when I quit.
You're like, I liked happy hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. What because I know you still go out. I see you out. You know, Morgan produces a lot of great events. What do you drink now when you go out?
Usually just soda water. Yeah. Towards the end of my bartending career, I was. Why are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing because I was just out and like we're all ordering soda water, and it's like sorry, not sorry. Like, that's the table you got. We don't
Yeah.
drink. Nobody,
Sorry.
so few people I hang out with now drink. And so it's like soda water, iced tea, soda water.
With a lime.
I usually am the one that wants the fruit.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, like even when I was still bartending, I worked at a brewery for the last 5 years that I was in the industry, and I didn't really like I could taste a beer and I could appreciate the style and pick out flavor notes of different hops or fucking whatever, but I never really liked beer that much. Like that beer was a means to an end for me. And especially like micro brews, I would always just feel so bloated and just gross after I drank too many of them. And so I feel like that's still the case that I find with like non-alcoholic beer. I might have one, but really like I just feel bloated. And so if you're not getting drunk and then you still feel bloated, I'm like, what's the point? I don't want that.
Have you tried Curious Elixirs at all?
No.
Would you like to?
Yes.
So I announced this on your episode. I was chosen to
Yeah.
host. So they're doing 100 parties in 100 cities, all on one night. Details to follow, but obviously you'll be part of it, right? So yeah, they're sending me a bunch of drinks to host a party.
What are Curious Elixirs?
So I've tried them a few times. They're different. They're very one tastes very much like it's like turmeric and rosemary. You'll taste like a smokiness. So they're all kind of crafted after cocktails.
Yeah.
But more in an elixir fashion. Some of them have stuff that's supposed to like relax you, like rotadella or something.
Yeah. Are they fancy, like adaptogenic?
Yeah, all that kind of shit.
I'm so into that shit.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure it out, and I need to actually talk to your guy here about some ideas and see. And then it'll be a kind of soft trial to do the Undrunken Festival. Which I think, and I feel like it's okay to announce this, will be Sobertober, to launch Sobertober.
Oh, fun. I like that.
Yeah. So working it all out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so funny because I was really like, I think we talked about this off mic, ready to put the podcast like on a shelf. I just did. And then Morgan shared his episode. Then we talked for like 5 hours. I looked at like the timestamps on stuff. I was like, we literally hung out and just talked for 5 hours. I only got 2 hours recorded, 20 minutes that was usable. But I was like, holy crap, that was amazing. And then Morgan shared his episode, and I got to see all these wonderful comments. And then I had people reach out, like, and I'm like, okay, gotta stick with it.
You got reinvigorated.
It's still a lot of work,
yeah.
But yeah, I got the party. That was like mind blowing. I was like literally recording the intro to your episode.
Yeah.
And I got that email and I was like, so
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, we'll get to try some non-alcoholic beverage. There is one that they have that I did really like. I don't remember which mix it is. I've got it recorded somewhere. But yeah.
That's kind of my splurge for like when I'm at home, because you can't find shit like that at very many bars. I feel like every once in a while you'll go to a restaurant that has like fancy mocktail kind of craft elixirs like that. But
you have to be careful with those though too. I was just talking with a friend of mine about this. Like, I've been served a mocktail that had alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And like I didn't drink it, but like how devastating would that be for me it was okay, but for some people that could be like devastating.
Oh yeah, and like the shame associated with that.
Yeah, and then what if it triggered them? Just tasting it, just smelling it, like, I mean, honestly, I think if you're that sensitive, you probably shouldn't be at bars ordering mocktails anyway. But
yeah,
to each their. It was enough that I don't order mocktails anymore. I will, like at my local. I love South Fork, but I can watch them make it. They know.
Yeah, because you're standing right there.
And half the ownership team doesn't drink. So I know that they understand that this is actually important. This isn't just somebody,
It's not just oopsies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
somebody's
that's
life.
Yeah. But like the kombucha is off tap, right?
Mhm.
I watch them pour it. Like there's no chance that they're going to give me a beer on accident.
Yeah.
I know what that tap is. Because I love splurging on it. I love a fancy mocktail. I want to celebrate. We were talking, okay, remember you and I were talking about Can
Yeah.
and the non-alcoholic champagne.
Yeah, I figured out what brand it was. It was called Naughty, like Knotty.
Really?
Naughty.
Yeah.
Because it's English.
That sounds fun.
It was so good. But yeah, I ordered this champagne there, and the server brought it to me, and I took a sip, and I seriously, it stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
They just brought me champagne.
Was it triggering?
It was scary.
Yeah.
I feel like. Yeah, it was scary to me. Because once I got that sobriety under my belt and I realized that I actually should be sober, this is a good path for me. I don't want to drink now. I've had one instance of my sobriety being tested so far, because I'm coming up on almost 3 years of sobriety. A little over 2.5, I guess, at this point.
It'll be 3 years this summer.
Wait, yeah. Yeah, I am coming up on 3 years. Huh. Time flies. But I found out a couple months ago that my dad started drinking again. And my dad got sober when I was 18.
Yeah.
I got a letter when I was in rehab from my dad saying that he had quit drinking. He's been sober for 20 years. And I just found out from his landlord, actually, was the one that told me, because his landlord said he was concerned about my dad and how many Heinekens he'd been drinking lately. And I was like, excuse me? Like, my dad doesn't drink. What are you talking about? But I found that out about my dad, I think mid-February of this year. And that was devastating for me. That was like so off the table. Like, that was
not even a blip on your radar.
Not even a possibility. I would have never thought that my dad would have started drinking again. Which I feel like goes to show, like, you really do have to take it one day at a time, because he had been sober for 20 fucking years.
That's a long time to just. I was just talking with a friend of mine. They haven't drank in almost 7 years. And I asked them, like, do you think you ever will? I'm like, no. Like, 7 years. Like,
yeah, like, are you crazy? And I feel the same way about myself at almost 3 years. I'm like, no, I would never drink again. But when I found out about my dad, I also found out that same week, like within just 2 or 3 days of each other, I found out a friend of mine was murdered on Christmas last year. A friend that I grew up with, like went to kindergarten with, that I used to work with, that we used to party together, known him my whole life. And so having those two pieces of bad news back to back, I was so sad. I don't feel like I haven't experienced grief like that since I've been sober. And that tested my sobriety for the first time. And it was just kind of interesting to me when I realized what was happening. Like, it was fascinating to me that my brain snapped back to that so fast. It's like the last 3 years of sobriety almost didn't even matter, because my brain was like, oh shit, this is hard. These are really hard feelings. I'm really sad. Like, I don't want to feel like this. And I wanted to get fucking annihilated that week. And I've had thoughts in the last couple of years, like when it's sunny out and I'll have this fleeting thought in my head. I'm like, oh man, like a glass of rosé sounds so good. Like, oh, I just want like a glass of wine on the porch in the sun. Sounds fantastic. But it's this very fleeting thought that just comes and goes. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good, but I don't drink, so like, guess I'm not going to do that. And it doesn't stick with me. But this feeling of wanting to just get fucked up and black out and just drink until I can't fucking remember, that stuck with me for a couple days. And it, like, I've never felt like that.
How'd you get through it?
I think just talking about it and allowing myself to feel that way, and realizing that, like, I kind of just had this I guess, self-awareness that once I realized that, I'm like, oh wow, like my brain wants to get fucked up because I've never processed emotions like this. I've never had to process hard emotions since being sober. And so once I had that realization, I was able to just kind of, I don't know, sit with it and just be curious about it and just allow myself the space to move through that and to know, like give myself the permission that it's okay. Because when you spend 20 years like coping in a certain way, because I use drugs and alcohol to cope with hard emotions. That was the coping strategy that I picked when I was in my teens, and it was fun and it worked for a long time, so I stuck with it. And now I need to retrain my brain to use other coping mechanisms. And so I just feel like it's a matter of, like, yeah, sometimes my brain is going to want to get fucked up sometimes because that's all it knew how to do for so long.
So much braver to go through it.
Yeah.
And feel it. It's hard. I think one of the things you touched on that I have found vital, and I think this has been echoed through so many interviews, is community and talking about it and sharing it and connection, shared experience, right? Like, your partner and you have been through quite a bit of shit together, with and without alcohol. And so to have that resource built into the relationship, I imagine, is very helpful.
Yeah, and especially with Morgan, like, because we got sober separately from each other. He got sober after we broke up back in 2017, I think. And then I got sober, when I was with a different partner,
right,
4 years later. And I think it was after coming back together, now that we are both sober, I feel like that was vitally important for us in our relationship, that we both had to go through our own shit and both hit our own rock bottoms separately in order to make a relationship work. So I don't think that we would not be together
if alcohol was around.
Yeah. If we were still drinking, and also I think if we tried to get sober together, for some reason, I just don't think that would have ever worked. I think there was so much resentment in our relationship, like conscious or unconscious,
right,
that we were holding against each other, that I don't think that we would have been able to get through that. I just think we needed to, like, completely separate ourselves and, like, go through all of those emotions by ourselves.
Well, and I don't think we captured this on the recording, but one of the things is learning to love yourself too, right? Because if you're broken and you're drinking, and the other person's broken and drinking, and then you come together, it's just two people not dealing with their stuff.
Yeah, like, you're still broken.
And by broken, I mean, like, to me, broken is like you're not dealing with things. You don't have healthy tools. You're not processing things. Broken is the pattern, not the person.
Yeah, like
I want to clarify that, because I don't want anybody listening to go, I'm broken. No.
Yeah.
You're in broken patterns, broken behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can get sober, but if you don't address the underlying issues as to why you were drinking so heavily for so long in the first place, like, you're still broken. You're just sober.
Right.
But you're still, like, you still don't have healthy relationships. You're still codependent, or, whatever else.
I think that was my breaks with drinking. I was testing myself. See, I don't have a problem. I can give it up. But there wasn't intention behind it. And that was what was different this time. It was like you, I accidentally happened, because it was only supposed to be for this, like, short amount of time. But intention is everything. It was such an intentional choice that it became permanent, because I was intentionally learning about it. I was intentionally going, why am I drinking?
And it's such a game changer.
It really is.
I don't feel like, in my experience, because I gave up alcohol, I would, do sober October, dry January, dry February because there's less days, shorter. Like I've done that so many times.
Yeah.
Over the years, but it was never, I had never had any self-awareness to ever stop to think about why I was drinking in the first place. And I feel like you really have to get at like the meat of it. You have to get like deep down in those meaty, hard emotions.
Yeah.
To have any sort of understanding, or I think any chance of staying sober.
You mentioned your dad, and I'm curious how much of your relationship with alcohol do you think was connected to his relationship with alcohol and his, I think the word you used was dry drunk, because I think he quit drinking but never, like you said, he never addressed the reasons behind it.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I don't.
It was just.
Yeah, I don't think that he ever like worked the program or anything like that. I think he just quit and was like, "Well, I'm fine now."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Better.
How much of my drinking was related to his? I would say 100% of it.
Really?
Yeah. I think that growing up with a non-present father is detrimental to little girls. And I don't think my dad did that on purpose. I think my dad is also just a broken human being just trying his best to make it through life too.
Yeah.
And I can see that and I can forgive him for that now. But I did have a lot of resentments towards him for a long time.
Well, and you learn, monkey see, monkey do. So if he's drinking, of course you're going to drink.
Yeah. I never drank with my dad though.
No, I imagine not, because you were 18 drinking and that was when he went dry.
Yeah, he quit before I was ever legal to drink, but that doesn't mean I wasn't drinking.
Oh my gosh, the amount of alcohol I consumed before I was legally supposed to.
Yeah.
What would you say to younger you?
That you're better than this. Yeah, that you're better than this. You deserve better. You deserve to treat yourself better.
Yeah.
You deserve to love yourself.
That one got my heart right there. That's good.
Because you're worth it. Yeah. I never thought I was worth anything,
I feel like a lot of worth for me, I kind of like you, right? Like concurrent with giving up alcohol was also like all this self-discovery and hard charging as far as like doing some work and the worth. Like, and I don't want to say too much because I've got my own interview coming up here soon. But it's amazing how much more worthy I feel of my own company.
I love hanging out with myself now.
High five. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad for Morgan sometimes now because he's like, "Do you want to hang out?" And I'm like, "No. I want to sit at home with my cats. Leave me alone."
I think you and I talked about this because we were originally, so today's Tuesday. We were originally going to get together on Sunday. But I spent Sunday like reading, curled up in a blanket. Like I'd be like, I'm going to do this and then I'll call Heidi. And it was like I was enjoying just myself and just doing my thing.
And I was a block away doing the same thing. I was like, Courtney will call me if she wants to.
That's what I said. I was like, Heidi will call if she really wants to. Yeah, and and it was rainy and it was just, I don't know, it was cozy. And I don't know that I would have done something like that a couple years ago. Not without alcohol.
Yeah, I feel like especially in my 20s, like I was constantly looking for distraction at all times, at all costs. Always trying to go out. I was never at home in my 20s.
Right.
Just, I couldn't sit by myself. I couldn't be with myself. I had to be surrounded by other people. Distractions, always.
Yeah, like I think like, drinking, it was either I was drinking because I was bored or I was laying in bed because I was hungover from
Mhm.
drinking the day before. No, yeah, I think alone time was just so different before.
Mhm. For me, like my sobriety journey of quitting and then the like intense healing that I was doing in the months shortly thereafter and picking up meditation at the same time, and all of that is so deeply like intertwined
Mm.
with each other for me that I feel like sobriety is part of my self-love now in a way, because they're so connected. I feel like I can't have one without the other.
Well, I would say the opposite is probably how I've seen it until you said that, where it's how could I love myself if I'm putting poison into my body
Yeah, right.
and disconnecting,
Yeah.
because that's what alcohol does. It disconnects your spirit,
Mhm.
removes it from you. That's why you get uninhibited.
Mhm. And it is a poison. Like that's what you're doing when you're drinking. You're literally poisoning yourself.
The alcohol we drink is the same alcohol that they use to sanitize hospitals. Heard that on a Mel Robbins podcast, and that blew my mind.
Mhm.
It was like a doctor from Stanford. Even Mel Robbins, her jaw was on the floor, and I'm like, if Mel Robbins is just learning this, clearly we're not talking about it.
Yeah, because nobody talks about it. It's
Yeah.
glamorous and fun.
It is still very much portrayed that way.
Mhm.
And when was the last time you looked at a drunk person and thought they were cool?
Definitely not since I've been sober, that's for sure. I can't fucking stand drunk people now. I cannot stand them. I still go out,
Yeah.
but like I go home.
Yeah.
At a certain point, right around that like 10 o'clock mark usually.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
fucking out.
You're being gracious with 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
A lot of
ideally.
places. Yeah.
Ideally, for sure. Yeah, I can't. And I feel like even when I bartended, I don't know. I don't feel like I've ever liked drunk people. I felt like I had to get drunk to be around other drunk people.
Wonder how true that is for people.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many people are getting drunk just to tolerate being around other drunk people.
I know I did a few times. I would get off work and just like knock back like 2 shots back to back
So
and
you
then
could
have a
hang out.
beer, just so I could like get on everyone else's level.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like, yeah. Huh.
But I think now being around, I mean, if somebody has a buzz, they're only a couple drinks in or whatever, I can tolerate that. But people that are like very drunk, sloppy, belligerent, that type of person, if I encounter those people out in the wild now, it's like my hackles go up, like my fight or flight kicks in. I don't feel comfortable around people like that.
You almost recognize the lack of safety.
Yeah, I just feel unsafe. I don't like it, and I want to get out of that situation as fast as possible.
I'm noticing that if I can tell somebody's been drinking, that's about the time I'm like, okay. Yeah. And it's hard because I'll meet somebody, especially like at the restaurant, like music nights, I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, oh, this is great. Like we're having a great conversation. But then it's like 1, 2 beer and like you might as well be talking to the wall because this girl is somewhere else now.
Yeah. It's really like unfulfilling for me to interact with people.
A good word.
That are
unfulfilling.
Yeah, it doesn't satisfy my need for connection anymore. I think because I know that person isn't going to remember our conversation the next day.
I've seen these people. So there was these people I met at the restaurant and they were like giving me like I don't know. I want to say like dating advice or something, right? And I was like, okay, I've seen them. They do not remember me.
Oh,
And
no.
they were like classic drunk people, so invested. Oh, sweetheart, I really want to hear about what your future holds, like the whole bit.
They're like, no, tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Oh yeah, I got to know how this turns out for you and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I've seen them since.
They don't even recognize you. Oh, that's
No,
bad.
no. And like, not for nothing, but I'm not going out of my way to be like, hey, remember me?
Right. And you know that that has nothing to do with you as a
Oh,
human being or
100%.
have
But
anything to do with your self-worth, but it still feels shitty when you spent that whole evening talking to that person. It's like, cool, they don't even remember
I didn't want to though. They were like begging, right? You know
that.
how like, no, no, tell me, tell me. And you're like, okay, well, da da da.
Yeah.
And then like when they started repeating themselves, that's like, oh, I should have left 30 minutes ago. If you're
Yeah.
repeating yourself, you were gone already.
Yeah. That's when you say, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. And then you just Irish goodbye.
You know what? I need to start doing that more.
Yeah.
I'm so bad at goodbyes because it's just like I want to make sure I don't want to offend anybody and be like, you never said goodbye to me. I'm like, sorry, you know.
I'm just so bad. I'm the most awkward person at saying goodbye. I can't leave a conversation to fucking save my life. All right. All right, I'm going to head out. All right, it's good to see you. All right, well, talk to you soon. All right. Give me a hug. Okay. All right, have a good
It was
night.
good
All
to
right.
see you. Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Say goodbye like
Okay.
18 times before I actually leave.
Uh-huh.
And by the time I leave, everybody's like, get the fuck out of here. God. Just go.
I love your story. I love the sober on accident. I love that you and Morgan found your way back to each other. So I want
Yeah.
to talk about that because
Yeah, I didn't even talk about that yet.
yeah, it's such a beautiful story and
Yeah. Again, by accident.
the best thing.
Because you can't force anything in life, right? Like I feel like everything it just has to like happen by accident. After I left my ex, I was doing a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
I'm aggressively healing, and I'm taking an inventory of all of my past relationships, and I'm thinking back about how I've only ever dated alcoholics, and every relationship I've ever been in has been abusive in some way. And so, of course, I'm thinking about Morgan because he and I were together for almost 5 years. Like
You were engaged.
we
Yeah.
were engaged twice.
Yeah.
We almost got married. Like he was a very big part of my life for a long time. And our relationship back then was not healthy. It was toxic, it was codependent. But I realized after I left my most recent ex that, the abusive one, well, like I just said, they were all, but the bad one, the shitty one. Um, After I left him, I realized that as bad as my relationship with Morgan was, it was the the most of that bad behavior was fueled by alcohol. It was the alcoholism that was the problem.
The third person.
Yeah.
Third party.
Yeah, it was like the third person in our relationship. And so I realized that Morgan never was intentionally trying to hurt me. He was not maliciously um hurting me in our relationship. It was the alcoholism. And like, yeah, we would yell at each other and he'd call me a bitch or whatever, but it was the alcohol that was driving all of that behavior. Yeah. And so once I realized that I felt this need as part of my healing journey, I wanted to reach out to him and forgive him for his alcoholism because I knew that he got sober after we broke up. Morgan and I were together from about 2012 to 2017. And so he had been sober for years at this point. And I wanted to, I don't know, just reach out and be like, hey, I forgive you. Like I was moving back to Carnation at the time. I wanted to just be on good terms with him in case if I saw him at the grocery store, like ran into him around town or something, just to smooth things over and like bury the hatchet, just,
hey, we cool.
Yeah, we're cool, man. I forgive you. I understand, like, you're an alcoholic. I get it now. It's all good. And so I had to call my friend John and ask John to ask Morgan to unblock me so that I could call him. And so once he unblocked me,
I don't know why we're both giggling, but it is kind of like,
I was like, because I'm like, no, I'm trying to be nice. Don't unblock me. It's cool. But yeah, once we started talking again, it was just, I don't know. We just kept talking.
yeah.
And I was very transparent with him about the hard time I was going through. And he was a support for me. And he didn't need to be. Like, he didn't have to be.
Right.
But he was there for me when I was going through some really fucking rough shit. And I just think that, I don't know, we just both realized that there were still feelings there. And so it just kind of happened again. And it was hard. We've been back together for almost 2 years now. And it was really, really hard at first because I was going on this healing journey in real time while I'm reconnecting with my ex-fiance, which looks horrible on paper. Like, it's just not a good idea. But I broke up with him probably like 7 times that first summer, every couple weeks, because I would be going through it and realizing things about myself. And I think the overwhelming emotion, more than anything else, in the last couple of years, like, I think it's just sadness. Like, I just felt sad for myself and for who I was for so many years and for the treatment that I put up with for so long. I just feel sad for that girl. Yeah. Because I did deserve better. Like, she deserved so much better. But I didn't know. I didn't know how to ask for that for so long.
You and Morgan talk about your sobriety together?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that like?
Yeah, like when I was going through, when I found out my dad had started drinking again, Morgan was the first person I talked to about it. And it's so nice because he's sober and he's gone through all of his own processing and his own healing journey. Like, he gets it.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to be with somebody that I can be completely 100% honest with him and he doesn't judge me for it.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have been through some pretty ugly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know. I feel like sobriety is like beautiful ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when there's alcohol involved, that's when people get really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know. Been through some rough stuff. But going through rough stuff with alcohol was just always uglier.
Oh, it's so ugly.
Like, I think we talked about this, you're saying your friend died and you wanted to just get annihilated. And when my sister was murdered, I was near catatonic for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Just drunk, numb as I could be.
Yeah.
And hindsight, I don't think it did me any good.
But at the time,
that was how I knew how to cope.
Yeah.
The same thing happened when, my ex's dad committed suicide, and I was annihilated through that too, because it was big and hard and heavy. And it's, you say that's the only time you really feel like your sobriety's been challenged. And I am extra grateful for people like you that have shared those stories, because I feel like when the time comes for me to go through something, I've had loss. I've had to say goodbye to people, family. I broke up with a boyfriend, and you go, ugh, a drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that thought 100 times,
but not really actually wanting to.
Yeah, it was always just a fleeting thought, but I've never had it actually take hold of me where it was a constant thought in the back of my mind for like days straight. Yeah. And I've lost friends. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat.
But back to back, like that. Well, and murder sucks.
Yeah.
And so I think we talked about this last time. It's just so fucking tragic.
It's different than losing somebody, I don't know, from any other way of dying.
And death is tragic.
Any kind of death is tragic.
But especially murder, no, somebody deciding to end another life it's big.
I've had a couple friends that have been murdered now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's such a weird fucking thing. Like, why do I even have to say that? It sucks that I can sit here and say I know multiple people that have been murdered. Fuck that, dude. It sucks. Because it shouldn't happen. It doesn't have to happen.
No.
It's so preventable.
Right. Well, and I think we talked about this. Like, I know for sure alcohol was involved in my sister's murder.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about your friend's murder.
Mm-hmm. One of them, yeah.
You know, and totally preventable, right? Alcohol just like it makes you so raw and emotional, and there's no filter.
Yeah, like the highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Yeah,
it's just this chaotic like roller coaster of life constantly.
I think that's probably why, because that, I mean, you got to think about the brain chemicals that get released with that, right? Even if it is like all muddled, there's like the dopamine and the serotonin and all the oxytocin that happens with all of this, right? I think that's why myself, I know Jim Dennison, Zach Wist, Ryan, like multiple people that I've interviewed were, I wouldn't say we're adrenaline junkies, but we're hard charging and we do that kind of stuff. I think that's probably also connected to the alcohol, right? Like why we all liked the alcohol too.
Yeah.
Was the
because it's like risky.
The rush.
Yeah, the rush. It's risky. It's fun. Yeah. I definitely, that resonates with me. I started getting into mountain biking and like riding motorcycles when I was dating my ex before I got sober. But now since I've been sober, like I've definitely leaned into those hobbies more. I think I feel like I get more satisfaction out of those.
I definitely think I'm more capable too.
Yeah.
Like I do things now and I'm like, I can't believe that I do that. Right? Like, not that I wasn't active before, but it's like I can do it differently. I'm clear-headed.
Yeah.
There's such a different clarity that comes, I think.
I just feel like life is more meaningful for me now.
Like that.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I really try. I know life is so short and I feel like I missed out on so much of it being hungover and drunk for like 20 years straight that I don't want to miss out on anymore. Like I really try to stay mindful. And that's part of my meditation practice that I've continued for the last couple of years. I try to meditate every day. I don't. Like I'm not gonna act like I'm some fucking guru. I skip days all the time, but I try to keep up with it and I try to stay mindful and I try to stay present as much as possible. And you can't be present when you're drunk.
No.
Those two things, like it's not possible. One is a distraction. You cannot be present when you are presently distracting yourself.
You know, one thing I've gotten back that I just love, I read so much more now.
Me too.
I always loved reading. And I think I really got away from it a lot. Well, one, my books were all packed up for years in storage. But also just like have a glass of wine and read, maybe, but I never stopped at one glass.
Yeah. You can't read a book when the room is spinning.
No. Or the bathtub or the couch.
Yeah, I gave up. I noticed, I feel like I have reverted back to the hobbies and the things that made me happy when I was a little kid. I've noticed because I was a voracious reader when I was a child and I used to love to paint and I loved animals and riding my bike. And all of these things that I did as a child, I'm doing them again now as an adult, and I get so much joy out of it because that's something that's very true for me too. Is that I gave up reading. I didn't read anything for probably 15 years. I didn't read a single book for an entire decade in my 20s, and I've read so many books in the last couple of years.
I'm just blown away by this. I don't know if anybody else listening to this feels this way, but you just like hit something on the head for me. I am doing the things that brought me joy as a child. Reading, right? Like climbing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I used to get in trouble for climbing trees when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
All my mom wanted was a little girl. She had 4 boys before me. I was supposed to be her perfect little girl in dresses, and I was out climbing trees.
Yeah. Like
and,
you do.
And exploring and adventuring and all of this stuff. And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at now. Like, I can't wait to like go explore some scary stuff or, climb something. And
Because when you're not numbing yourself with alcohol all the time, you can actually be your true self again.
mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about it. I feel like I've gone back to being who I really am.
Do you think if you hadn't reconnected with Morgan, that dating would be just wicked different?
I have no interest in dating.
Right?
I'm so fucking glad that Morgan and I reconnected, because I cannot imagine having to go on Tinder or like any dating apps and trying to like get out there. Like, no, thank you. It sounds awful.
Well, and then, I mean, drinking
Mm-hmm.
is like the go-to for connecting.
Oh yeah.
Want to grab a drink and see if we like each other? It's like, no, I don't.
No. Oh god. And I feel like I was so awkward, like on first dates, when I was drinking to begin with, that I can't imagine the level of awkward I would reach trying to go on a date sober.
Well, okay. Do you think you would have had the relationship before Morgan, round 2? Do you think that you would have even dated that person if alcohol hadn't been involved?
No, I feel like I would have, because like it was very much like a fairy tale at first. Like I said, we had a lot of the same interests, but also, I don't know, maybe I would have dated but not have been in like that serious of a relationship. So I just don't see how logistically how you could be with somebody that drinks so much if you're sober. I don't know how people do it. I know there's relationships out there where one partner is sober and the other one still drinks, and it works for them, and that's great. But to me,
I couldn't do it.
I don't think I
I
could do
couldn't
it.
do it. I'm too, I don't know what the word would be. I'm a little tired. Connection's too important to me.
Yeah. It just feels like it would be annoying to me.
Touche. Valid point. I couldn't do it though.
Yeah.
But I also like think I would have a hard time dating somebody that doesn't smoke weed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a disconnect.
Yeah.
Right? These are I think anything, if you're going to do something daily, if it's a part of your life, it's probably a good thing to connect with that person over that.
Yeah, like I don't drink or smoke or do anything now.
Can you imagine if you hated music? You and Morgan's relationship?
Right.
That would be funny. You never go to a show? Never?
Never do anything.
How would that work?
I would say actually that brings up a good point, because I feel like when I first started hanging out with him again, I felt like I had a really hard time connecting with music at first. And I think because of like, I don't know, my nervous system was so heightened.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. I don't know. I felt like I felt numb.
I still have a hard time with it, how loud it can be sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just went and saw a friend's band and they were great, but the sound system was really hard it was loud, and it's just like,
yeah, like it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with alcohol, like that filter just goes, and everybody's screaming at each other anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and like going to show sober is a totally different experience.
I was looking at pictures, so I went to a festival last summer with my best friend, and she says COVID ruined me, and I'm like, probably quitting drinking did this too. I just don't like being in the crowd. So we're at this festival, and all this music's going on and all the crowds are down there and we're behind the vendor tents sitting on the hill watching. And she's like, why are we even here? And I'm like, I don't know, because we're outside listening to live music. She goes, you're a dork.
Yeah, from like a half mile away. I can see them.
But I'm not getting annoyed by all the drunk people.
Yeah.
No judgment.
When I go to shows now, I feel like I notice I'm like hypersensitive to how sweaty people are now. Because people,
you gotta do the Wonder Woman pose to keep people away from you, right?
God.
Like hands on the hips, wide stance, right? Just like
just getting in that like triple threat.
What haven't we talked about that you've listened to the podcast? Have you listened to multiple episodes?
Yeah,
I mean, I know you've listened to
Morgan's, of course. Listen to Beverly, and what is it? John, the one that bartends naked.
Jim.
Okay, yeah, I listen to him.
Jim's been sober for like 25 years.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome.
But like we were talking about, his wife drinks.
Does she?
Yeah, and I don't know if you, I don't think it was in his episode, but he was on a few like group episodes, and he talked about how like he'll fuck with her because she drives like hot cars.
Yeah.
And so he'll be like, yeah, sure, we could take your car, and they go out drinking, and so he drives home and he drives it bad on purpose, and it just drives her crazy.
Oh, funny.
I'm just like, it's also the guy that's bartending, getting everybody drunk. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep, nope, that's a good episode. I loved Morgan's episode. Of course, Beverly's near and dear to my heart. Yeah. I loved ours. It was short, but I really thought that was like a great place for it to end.
Hooked people in.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're all hooked. I hope we are not disappointing.
I've had people texting me in the last week, like, when's part 2 coming out?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, everybody that you're listening right now, I love hearing from you. It keeps me going. So if you like what I'm doing by talking to people, I need to hear that feedback because it definitely stokes my fire.
Yeah, because you're just putting something out into the ether and like not knowing if people are listening or caring or liking it or.
I do look at plays on the app. Mostly, I don't look at plays anymore per episode because that will drive me. That's like watching for likes, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. But what I do watch is like the top 10, and it's interesting to see how that shifted. So I do think this is funny. Morgan is climbing up quickly.
Of course he is.
Since he shared his episode, and so I think he might beat Johnny to 100 plays.
Oh no, poor Johnny.
I know, but I haven't looked in the past couple days because I was a little butthurt that I got knocked out of the top. Oh. So the top episodes are Johnny, of course, Beverly, and I think a lot of that is because one, it's the inspiration of the podcast and it's the first episode. And then tied for third is my friend Ryan and Kelly Quinn, Throttle Girl. So yeah, so what is that? So they're tied for third. So technically I'm in 5th place. I'm like,
on your own podcast.
I know. Listen to my episode. So you know what I did though? I did highlight my episode as start here because I do think it's like if you're going to listen to a podcast, you probably want to know something about the host.
Yeah.
And that episode was me being interviewed going on a year ago at this point, and anything that we didn't talk about, I know it's a little tricky because we talked about so much good stuff last week that I hope we remembered to bring that all back around.
Yeah.
I feel like we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I was trying to like remember talking points, what we talked about.
The beefiness.
I know, because that was such a good conversation. I'm so bummed out that we missed out on like recording the last half of it.
Yeah. That's okay.
It wasn't meant to be. It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. You know how I like to round things out. Yeah. Doing a little quick fire on the wheel of life. So just a sentence or two on how being undrunken has affected these different areas in your real life. You game?
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
How has being undrunken affected work?
I'm a lot better employee now. I have yet to call in hungover once since I've been sober.
That's good.
That used to be a very regular occurrence back in the day.
Yeah. How has being undrunken affected money?
Oh, I have more money in savings now than I ever have in my entire life. Yeah. I save money and spend money. I feel like an adult now.
Ooh, like an adult. I like
Yeah.
that. How has being undrunken affected love life?
It has improved greatly. Yeah. Like I said, my relationship with Morgan has not been easy in the last couple years. I've been on my own healing journey since we've been back together. We have been on a healing journey of sorts together in our relationship also. There was a lot of broken trust when we first started seeing each other again. We've been seeing a couples counselor for the last couple years now too.
I think everybody should.
Yeah. It's amazing because she helps us have hard conversations with each other and helps us figure out how to best communicate with each other. So we would have had these conversations separately without her, but they probably wouldn't have ended as well, right? And so she helps us get through really hard things in a healthier way.
Sounds like a very deep and authentic relationship.
Yeah. It's been wonderful reconnecting with him.
Yeah.
With us both being sober. I feel like I truly understand the meaning of unconditional love at this point. Because he has seen me at my worst. 100%. See, Morgan has seen me as the worst version of myself multiple times, and he still loves me for some reason.
Beautiful.
That's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
How has being undrunken affected family?
My relationships with my family are a lot better now. One thing that I've learned in the last couple of years too in my healing journey is that I came from a very codependent family. And so I'm learning how to set boundaries for myself. And I'm not always graceful when I do it, but I'm getting better at it. And I think I'm learning what those healthy relationships look like with my family too. And my brother and I didn't have a relationship for a long time. We would see each other on like birthdays and Christmas. And I realize now that was my brother setting a boundary with me because I was drunk all the time. And he didn't want that in his life.
Whereas now you're like having puzzle nights with him, which I think I love that. I love puzzles.
Yeah.
Yes, I noticed your shirt, Puzzle Masters Club.
Puzzle Masters Club.
Definitely noticed that. I was just doing a puzzle this weekend. I love it. How has being undrunken affected friends?
I love seeing my friends get sober.
Yeah.
There is no greater joy in my life than watching my friends get sober. And so I would say I've experienced kind of two different things getting undrunken. I've lost friends since I've gotten sober. Not so much of just the act of quitting drinking itself, but learning how to set boundaries with others. I had a couple really good friends, people that I thought were some of my best friends in life, that I set a boundary with early in my sobriety. And like I said, like I'm new at this. Maybe I'm not the best at it. Maybe, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying and I had good intentions and I'm not friends with them anymore. Which I guess is for the best, I think. We're all on different journeys in life. Sometimes people come and people go and they're, in your life for a certain reason.
Season or a reason. Yeah.
So I've experienced that since getting sober. And then I've also experienced a lot of my friends getting sober either before I did or after I did. And just seeing my friends excel and get
become
help
their
and be
truer
healthy.
selves.
Yeah, be healthy and happy in
Mhm.
their lives too. Like, I'm just so proud of them. And it's so cool to hang out with my buddies that we used to be roommates, or we used to go out and, get fucked up together. But now we can go hang out and like have an NA
Yeah.
and like go to a show, and like it's just cool. It's just really fucking cool to have that with people.
That shared experience too.
Mhm.
Yeah. How has being undrunken affected spirituality?
It is so deeply intertwined. Like I was saying, like the meditation and self-reflection and healing and sobriety all swirling around together. My spirituality, I'm not a religious person, and I never have been. I've always kind of believed in karma and the universe, and that, I don't know, that we are one, I guess. And that's a belief that I've always had, but it's just been strengthened since getting sober.
How's being undrunken affected self?
It's the best thing that I could have ever done for myself. I actually know what self-love means now. I know what self-esteem means. I know what self-worth means. And these are all things that I thought I knew what it meant to be self-confident or love myself, but I think I never truly did. And I feel like I really understand what it means to like hold myself with love and compassion now.
Unconditional love for yourself.
Yeah, unconditional love for myself. I would have never found that if I was still drinking.
I mean, I feel like we could end there because that's pretty freaking amazing. Like, love.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I try my best to lead with compassion and love and understanding in everything I do now. I was very defensive when I was drinking. Like, I was angry. I held resentments. And I had a chip on my shoulder for a long time. I felt like I had something to prove because I didn't love myself. I didn't feel good about myself. So I always felt like I had to prove something or prove my worth. And I don't feel the need to do that anymore.
When do you think the biggest shift for you was? Was it that 6 to 9 month mark?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like my fight or flight was just so nonstop at first that it was just like survival mode. I was just trying to get through the day initially. And so I really didn't even think about my sobriety in any sense when I was, dealing with medical issues, and then dealing with being in an abusive relationship, and like all of those other like external circumstances that were so heavy and so hard for me to deal with at the time, that like sobriety and drinking were like the last thing on my mind.
Did Morgan being on the podcast or you coming on the podcast trigger anything? As far as conversations or thoughts about it that you hadn't really explored before?
No, I laughed when I heard his parts of his episode, because it's just funny how people remember things differently. No, I think it just, if anything, it just strengthened my love for him. Like, I'm just so proud of him for sharing his story and being so open. Like, he's so willing to support anyone in their sobriety. Anybody that comes to him and says that they're trying to stay sober, like he's there.
Yeah.
And I just think that's wonderful.
He really truly radiates just good dude vibes. Like,
Good dude vibes.
Good dude vibes. He's just a solid human, and you can feel that. And I'm very grateful for both of you.
Yeah, and that's like Morgan. That's who he is as a person, and he's, like he's been able to go back to, like, that's his true authentic self.
Yeah.
So he's a very deeply caring, compassionate person. He's all about community, and I don't know if he was able to show that when he was drinking either.
Yeah. As much as it makes us, we think uninhibited, I really think it prevents authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it makes you uninhibited, but it's also at such a surface level. There's no deep connection when you're drinking.
I certainly feel like we've connected. And I don't think that, I don't know. I don't think that it's one of those things that happens every day, right? I think that people come into our lives, like you were talking about, for a reason or a season.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very blessed that Morgan ended up the music producer for this replace, and I got to meet you and spend now going on like 9 hours sharing stories. And I really do think, like, such a profound thing. Like, again, blows me away. I accidentally got sober, and it was the best thing that ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm leaning into that idea so much more in my life now, that I just feel like everything happens for a reason. If you want something to happen, like I know I told you I've been interviewing for new jobs in the last couple months, and I've gone through 2 or 3 different interview loops, and I didn't get the first couple, and it's such a bummer. Like, yeah, I wanted that job, but I don't let it get me down. Now it's like, all right, well, it wasn't meant to be. I think the universe gives us gifts.
Yeah.
And your life will go on the path that it's meant to go, and you can learn lessons along the way. I feel like we constantly are going to be put into situations where we will be taught the same lesson over and over and over again until we learn it.
Get louder,
yeah,
and bigger, so you start fucking paying attention.
So it's like beating in your head. Like, we're going to go through the same lesson over and over again until we finally learn it. So I try so hard to find the lesson to be learned now in any situation, good or bad. There's always a lesson to be learned.
Do you find you feel a little bit more, I think the word stoic, in sobriety? Like, something will happen and you're like, as opposed to, like, right? Like,
yeah. I used to be so reactive.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And you said defensive.
Yeah, defensive and reactive. And I felt like I was under attack all the time, I guess. And so I would have to fight back no matter what the situation was. And I try really hard, because that can still be a pattern for me. I can jump to conclusions. I can be like, what? Like I get,
you talking smack?
Yeah. The fuck do you say? And I can jump to conclusions like that still, but I try really hard to take that beat, like that first, like, initial moment, and try to take a deep breath and understand and, like, process the situation first before I react now.
Yeah, I don't know that people that drink alcohol can do that with any real consistency anyway, because the alcohol's so detaching.
Yeah, you can't. It's being present in the moment with your emotions, and you can't do that if you're,
and I think on some level, alcohol used to be used for inspiration, right? And I'm thinking modern day, like, wine and paint night, right? Because it lowers inhibitions a little, lets people's creativity flow in and stuff. And I'm like, but you can get there without it. You really can.
Yeah. And at a certain point, I feel like it inhibits your creative process when you get deep enough down the rabbit hole.
Well, your eyes start crossing. Nobody's painting looks good.
Yeah. You think it looks great.
I am the same. Some of my beer goggles on the painting.
So you wake up and you're like, what is that? Is that upside down?
Thank you, Heidi. I love talking with you.
Thank you.
And I know like we're going to continue talking as friends, but
yeah,
I'm really grateful that you came on the podcast and that we were able to get your episodes pushed through quickly so that we could release them so close to Morgan sharing his episode.
Yeah.
I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah. I'm glad I could come back over and do this part 2 with you.
See, accidental sobriety, accidental 2-part episode.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to sharing more with you as we continue to explore being undrunken together with friends. I hope the Undrunken Podcast is helpful and inspiring to all of you out there. So if you liked this episode, please send it to a friend and help share these stories with more people.